Today, we're getting real about how easy it is to fall into habits that we know aren't good for us, but somehow we just can't seem to shake them off. Whether it's endlessly scrolling through social media, impulsively adding items to our online shopping cart, or turning to food for comfort. These habits often start as these small indulgences that can quickly take over. We'll learn how overcoming addictive habits isn't just about willpower. It's about compassion, support, and using tapping to help rewire our behaviors and thought patterns. To show us how, we are speaking to Dr. Damon Silas from DamonSilasPsychology.com. Dr. Silas is a clinical psychologist. Anxiety and trauma, including PTSD, are his specialty areas, as well as grief and loss. He is the author of From Morning to Night, Overcoming Loss, and he is currently coming to us from Germany, where he is supporting active military personnel and their families on the U.S. military base. I always love getting a chance to speak with him. Hi, Damon. How are you?
Oh, I'm well. Thank you so much. Hi, Jessica. It is exciting to be back, as always. So thank you for having me again.
Well, the question I love to start with is, you're a psychologist. Why did you decide to incorporate tapping into your practice?
Thank you for asking that. It's one of those things that in my journey of being I would say, young to mid-career psychologist, I transitioned from working with primarily children to, at some point, working with adults. So working with children, I would do play therapy stuff and things that I was trained in, which was perfect. And I was also trained very Freudian, psychoanalytic. And so when I started working with adults more, I was trying to use that more traditional talk therapy model. And what I found, especially in working with people who had been through some trauma, who had experienced different life issues and experiences along the way, I found that in some ways, traditional talk therapy wasn't as effective. And in some ways, and again, this is just my personal experience as a psychologist, but in some ways, what I noticed is as we would start to talk about their trauma, I could see the visceral, physical response in them. And it felt to me unethical to continue to push them to tell this story of trauma. And I didn't actually say where I was working. I was actually working with a lot of military service members at that time who had been through a lot of deployments. There were initiatives to help the service members who were coming back from OIF and OEF, or Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom at that time. And so I was seeing a lot of those folks come into my office and trying to use that traditional talk therapy model. It didn't sit well or right with me as I saw the response across the table, across the room from me in my patients. And so I just went on a search, and I started looking up different ways to work with trauma. And I don't even know how exactly I worded it, but however I did, EFT tapping was one of the first things that popped up in Google. And I just went on a search. And from there, I got to my first training with Dawson Church, and I was just hooked once I experienced what it was like, and then brought it back to the base and had people try it and saw almost immediate results. I was a believer at that point.
That's incredible. And I see this so often, that therapists incorporate tapping into their practice. And I think it's brilliant, because also we can learn so much from traditional therapy, and being able to combine it with this tapping is just such a perfect relationship, perfect combination. And I also think it's incredible that therapists like you are willing to try something that's relatively new, or at least, in the last 10 years, we're only just starting to get the science and research around it. And so I just want to say it's just incredible to see so many therapists incorporating this. Today, Damon, we're talking about these unhealthy habits. And, you shared a little bit about yourself and how you definitely work with a lot of heavy emotions. But when I mentioned this topic, because it's often requested, you said, oh, I have a lot of experience with this. I see this often. Can you tell me a bit about how you would define an unhealthy habit and just your way of looking at this challenge?
Sure. So what I found in my continued work is that people generally tend to resort to different habits that are things that they don't even have to think about, right? For instance, working at a base, what I found is service members might have their job during the day, but then in the evenings, they might go home and just play video games all evening. Or they might just get online and scroll through social media, or start to shop online, or engage in these different habits that I've found for most people, it's just an escape. It's a way to kind of get away from the everyday struggles, but also the stress of life. For some people, if they've come from some sort of, and I'm not saying that everybody who engages in these habitual patterns have a history of trauma. However, sometimes what I have found is for some people, they may use these habits to just mask over different emotions or things that are underneath and that feel good, right? Like these habits for most people, they feel good. I don't think I want to say like this isn't about blame or shame or saying people should or shouldn't be engaging in these behaviors, because we've all done it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right. And so it's more so about like, if we can figure out what's going on, and if somebody doesn't want to do it as much or doesn't want to engage in that particular habit, then maybe there's something else that we can look at that feels better to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I mentioned in the intro, a lot of these are just an indulgence. And when it's an indulgence, it's okay. It's that little escape. But then what happens is I've been there, you suddenly look and you're like, I've been looking at reels for an hour, or I've been playing video games every night that I haven't taken care of myself and I haven't connected with my loved ones. It's like, I think all of us within our time together can just very compassionately reflect and go, are there certain habits that maybe I started because they made me feel good, but now they don't feel so good because they're robbing me from being present or other experiences?
You just hit the nail on the head, and that's it, right? A lot of these habits, they start because they feel good, right? They start at a time in our lives when it feels good to have that extra additional stimuli, and for whatever reason. And so it's not about blame or shame, but it's more so it felt good at some point, and then maybe it started to change to where it took up just a little bit too much time, or as you said, it started to interfere with that person's ability to connect with their loved one, with their spouse, with their friends. Or maybe it started to become a habit in which they started to spend more money on something that they didn't intend to initially. So,
right.
Yeah, you can see the trajectory, and it just kind of, it goes from point A to point Z, and it's like, how did I get here?
Yeah. Right. And that is a big question. People say, how did I get here, and why is it so hard for me? Sometimes there's a lot of self-blame, like, gosh, I must not have enough willpower. There's something wrong with me. Why are some of these habits extra difficult to break?
Yeah. So if it was just about willpower, I'll say that somebody like myself as a mental health professional, we as a profession would not be needed, because so many people know and understand that what they're doing isn't necessarily something that they want to do all the time or continue to do in the way that they have been doing. And if willpower was a thing that everybody could employ, we wouldn't be employed, right? So So it's less about willpower and more about how our brains become wired over time. Not only that, but there's also the chemical called dopamine that constantly runs through our bodies when we get that hit of feeling good, right? So our brains, our neurons that fire together, wire together. Okay, so we're creating new neural pathways that end up being that, oh, I have this thing and it feels good, boom, bam, like your neurons connect and fire together. And that's just the shortest, quickest, easiest way to get from point A to point B. And who wouldn't want to take that a lot of times, right? It's like the difference between taking a ski path that's been well-traveled and a ski path that is like freshly snowed on and nobody has gone down that path. Like which path would you rather go down? You know, which is going to be the smoothest, easiest to get down? It's going to be the one that's been well traveled. And it's the same way with our thoughts and our habits and our feelings and all those things, that it's going to be that path that our brains are going to take. But also, again, that hit of dopamine that we get when we engage in these behaviors, over time, it's something that we come to depend on, that we come to rely on. And so our bodies want that. It needs it at some point, it feels like, right? And so it's about, for a lot of us, undoing. I mean, maybe some people have just developed a habit that's pretty new. So it could be undoing something that's new, within days or weeks. But for many of us, it might be months or years or even decades. You know, when we look at the advent of the cell phone and how it has evolved over time, you know, I think it's important to note that some of the things that we engage in on our cell phones are almost meant to be addictive. Because
there are millions, if not billions of dollars spent to help figure out how to make something more addictive so users stay on it more. I mean, they are studying how our mind works. They're studying how dopamine works, and they're creating these things to make us not want to stop. You know, whether it's the casino and how it's all laid out where it's hard to find the exit, or it's simply social media where you just keep getting that hit. I think what you're saying is so important because there's so much blame. We blame ourselves and we don't realize, in this case, it's stacked against us. We have to be proactive if we do have an addiction to something like this, to our cell phones.
Yes. I love how you said that it's stacked against us. And so we have to make a really conscious effort and engage in the work to detach from that behavior, from that activity. Because like you said, money is spent to keep us on our devices, and we're talking to the colors that are used, to the so it's the fonts, it's all of these things that it's very intentional. And so we have to be very intentional about creating that distance between us and that behavior so that we aren't enslaved to that behavior as much as we had been in the past.
Yeah. I'd love to jump into a tapping process, but before we do that, why do you feel like tapping in particular is something that can be so helpful in this case?
Yeah, well, I think it's really about creating new neural pathways and networks, right? And so if we have engaged in these behaviors for, let's say, 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, our brains have wired that way, right? And so with tapping, what happens is we're able to, create new pathways so that perhaps there's a moment of pause in between the thought and the behavior so that we can switch and engage in something different. But secondly, we can also figure out maybe there are reasons as to why we're engaging in these behaviors. So maybe there's some emotions behind it. Maybe there are some things that happened around the time when we started that behavior that we weren't even consciously aware of, that we're not even privy to. But with tapping, we can start to make those connections and say, oh, that's why I find myself doing it then. Or that's why I find myself doing it at these times or for this long or at that time of day. So we can start to put those puzzle pieces together. And then from there, we can then gain a little bit more control over something that has felt uncontrollable to us.
Yes, that makes so much sense. So where do we start with our tapping?
Whew. So Jessica, I think part of it is about starting where we are. Like there's no better place to start than where we are. And I think for most of us, if people who have tuned in, they may be feeling some sort of emotion about, perhaps it's the desire to stop, the desire to discontinue. So what I want people to do is think about the emotions that might be attached to that. So maybe you tried to stop this habit with your willpower, and I commend you for that. And maybe it's led to frustration or upset, disappointment in yourself that you haven't been able to stop. So I want people to think about that, whatever that emotion is. And you can rate that on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being actually you don't feel any of those frustration, anger, disappointing feelings, to a 10 being it's extremely high for you. Or, you can rate, I'll give people another option, your feelings around the level of difficulty in discontinuing. So, 0 being, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm going to be able to kick this habit so easily. Like, I can't even believe I'm listening to this man right now talk about this thing. To a 10 being, it feels like I'm about to move some mountains. And yes. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. So
and I just want to mention, the point of this is it's purely subjective. It's purely just for yourself to be able to notice at the end whether you feel like you have more control or you feel like that intensity has gone down. So many people get hung up on like whether they have the right number. And I think it's comforting to just be like, this is just for you so that you can notice the shift.
Yep. It's your number. It's like the comfort bed, the comfort number bed. It's your own number.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yep. There's no wrong way to do this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'm ready to tap when you are.
Yeah. So just thinking about that number for you, that emotion that comes up as you think about this habit and your desire to discontinue. And let's go ahead and begin by tapping on the side of the hand. And just repeat after me. Even though I feel like I can't stop.
I feel like I can't stop.
It is so hard to stop this habit.
It is so hard to stop this habit.
And I'm so frustrated.
And I'm so frustrated.
I choose to acknowledge that's where I am right now.
I choose to acknowledge that's where I am right now.
And what I feel right now.
And what I feel right now.
Good. Even though it's so frustrating to want to stop.
It's so frustrating to want to stop.
Over and over again.
Over and over again.
And to still be unsuccessful.
And to still be unsuccessful.
I feel like a disappointment.
I feel like a disappointment.
And helpless with this habit.
And helpless with this habit.
Yet I'm still open to trying again.
And I'm still open to trying again.
Good. Even though I get the impact this habit has had on my life.
I get the impact this habit has had on my life.
But truthfully, I kind of want to and like to escape.
Honestly, I'd kind of like to escape
From the overwhelm of life with this habit.
From the overwhelm of life with this habit.
And I still choose to be gentle with myself in this process.
And I still choose to be gentle with myself in this process.
Good. Good. So we're going to start with the inside of the eyebrow, just tapping right here. This habit.
This habit.
Outside of the eye, this frustrating, addictive habit.
This frustrating, addictive habit.
Underneath the eye. This frustration about this habit.
This frustration about this habit.
Underneath the nose. This helpless feeling around this habit.
This helpless feeling around this habit.
Good. Collarbone. This good feeling it gives me.
This good feeling it gives me.
Good. Underneath the arm. This fear I have about whether or not I can stop.
This fear I have around whether or not I can stop.
At the top of the head. Do I have the willpower?
Do I have the willpower?
Good. Back to the eyebrow. So many mixed emotions I have about this.
So many mixed emotions I have about this.
Outside the eye. So much confusion.
So much confusion.
Underneath the eye. This hit of dopamine it gives me.
This hit of dopamine it gives me.
And underneath the nose. This habit that I don't even have to think about.
This habit that I don't even need to think about.
Chin. Especially in a world of overwhelm.
Especially in a world of overwhelm.
Collarbone. It just comes so automatically now.
It just comes so automatically now.
Underneath the arm, like I'm on autopilot.
Like I'm on autopilot.
Top of the head, this addictive habit.
This addictive habit.
Good. Back to the inside of the eyebrow. It's frustrating and it feels good.
It's frustrating and it feels good.
Outside the eye. How can both of these things be possible?
How can both of these things be possible?
Underneath the eye. I know because I've been living it.
I know because I've been living it.
And underneath the nose. And it's been there for, think about how long it's been there for you. Impacting my life.
Impacting my life.
Chin. And it's scary to name this habit.
And it's scary to name this habit.
Collarbone. But admitting it can be the first step in healing it.
But admitting it can be the first step of healing it.
And underneath the arm, it's already taken so much time and energy in my life.
It's already taken so much time and energy in my life.
At the top of the head. So I'm ready to take back some of its power.
So I'm ready to take back some of its power.
And inside the eye, because it's had such a tight grip on me.
Because it's had such a tight grip on me.
Outside the eye. And part of me is tired.
And part of me is tired.
Underneath the eye. This habit is exhausting.
This habit is exhausting.
Underneath the nose. What started out feeling like freedom.
What started out feeling like freedom.
And an escape.
And an escape.
Chin. Is now starting to feel like imprisonment.
is now starting to feel like imprisonment.
Collarbone, something I'm trapped in.
Something I'm trapped in.
And now I'm just tired.
And now I'm just tired.
Underneath the arm. I'm ready to use the time, effort, and energy.
Gonna use the time, effort, and energy
that this habit has taken up.
That this habit has taken up.
Top of the head. Just a little bit differently now.
Just a little bit differently now.
Good. Take a nice deep breath in. And let go.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
I love that reminder. Good. I just love that reminder to start with where you are. And yes, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. So let's just tune back in.
No, but I love that, that's what came up for you, is just the reminder of, being where we are in that moment. Because sometimes we want to be all the way over here when we haven't even acknowledged what it is we're feeling. So.
Or we just go right into like fixing mode. Like, what's my strategy? What's my plan? But our nervous system, we're just so wired and frustrated and overwhelmed that it does feel like a big mountain. And the moment we can just acknowledge where we are and start to calm our nervous system, it's like our brain comes back online and we can begin to get ideas and be a bit more resourceful. Like, even as I was tapping, just so many thoughts were going through my mind. And that's what I love about tapping, is that it's almost like it opens you up to your own wisdom and your own intuition.
Yes, and that's exactly what I love about it too, Jessica, because what I found is, for instance, if I'm working with somebody and I may kind of know what the connector is or what might be helpful for that client, for that patient, for us to engage in tapping, what I found is people are able to come to that on their own and make those connections so much more quickly than me giving them that answer. But also, it's more empowering when you can own that answer too. You can find that solution too. So yes, that's exactly it.
Yes. And it's a good reminder. Don't do the inner work. Don't ask yourself the questions. Don't try to dig deep until you do the tapping, because that's, when we're stressed, it's hard to get those answers. So now that we're feeling calmer, maybe that number has shifted a little bit, definitely feel more grounded in our body. What can we do next? What questions can we ask ourselves to go a little bit deeper in this new calm and compassionate way?
Yes. So I think, as now, like you said, the dust has settled, now we can start to explore just a little bit and see what has been underneath, if anything, right? Generally, something's underneath, as we all know. And so I love the idea from Gabor Mate, who's a phenomenal teacher, physician, and he's an expert in addictions work. And just watching him, he's just a phenomenal person to watch and listen to, and so much wisdom. But he talks a lot about, in the process of addictions and habits, etc., of this idea of compassionate inquiry. And it's really about how we can compassionately ask these questions without shame, blame, guilt, any of those feelings, because that's a really low energy, but also it doesn't help us to get to the next step, which is really uncovering what has been underneath for so long. And so if we can engage in somewhat of a compassionate inquiry, I think that is very important for us to do a little bit more work in this realm.
So what questions can we begin to ask ourselves?
Well, I think it's about, is there a void that I'm trying to fill, or am I trying to avoid something, right? So it's asking that, because usually when we go to these habits, there either is a void And for some people, it could be a void in, relationships, or there's an emotional void that is there, or trying to avoid other, more difficult emotions that might be underneath as well. And then, asking, and for some people, is it safe to even inquire, right? So, but yeah, I think it's just about like, and where did this thing come from? What was going on in my life at that time where I developed this habit? So, it's about just kind of doing the archaeological dig.
Yes. If I may use myself as an example here of this work, if I can share a quick story.
Yeah.
When I struggled with overeating, and I ended up writing a book about this, but when I was 12 years old, I never in a million years thought that I would ever write a book about this because, my struggle with food was just there since I can remember. And for me, it was this addiction of, I had so much anxiety that it's what I needed to just calm me down. So whether it's like food or escaping social media or that video game, sometimes when you have the really bad anxiety, you have this one thing. So then when I'm 15 years old and I start to try dieting, well, that's the worst idea in the world because now I've taken away the only tool I have to release stress, which is overeating, because I didn't have any other tools at 15 years old. And so it wasn't until years later that I started to use the tapping and realized what am I trying to escape? What am I trying to not feel with this habit of just suddenly going from eating one granola bar to the whole box? It was this anxiety, and now I had a tool. The other side of this, I'm going to use myself again for social media. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I put them to bed. Damon, it is like an Olympic sport, putting a 2-year-old, he's actually I have a 5-year-old, he just turned 5. But a 2 and a 5-year-old, putting them to bed is like an Olympic sport. Like, I feel like I should get a medal at the end of competition. It ends with just brush your teeth, we're scrambling, and then you end up having to lie with them, and then you're half asleep. And so by the end of it, you just like come out of their room and you're like tired and you're half asleep. And I would just go on social media because it's what I had energy for. But then so much time would go by that I'd go, oh, I didn't get to like all the things I wanted to do for me. I didn't get to do the self-care that I wanted. I just needed that escape. Reflecting on that isn't like a big traumatic experience. It's going, okay, I need to be strategic here and limit myself, give myself a timer, look for a little bit, but then prioritize taking care of myself and having a night where I can do things I need to while the kids are sleeping. And so, I wanted to share those kind of two extremes of one can be really looking at your emotions, another one can just be practical. None of that really we get answers to unless we're clear enough to get those answers.
Right. Exactly. And such great examples. It's how you deal with, and I think it's about creating just a different relationship with that thing. It may not necessarily be, as you said, to get rid of it altogether. I mean, we can't get rid of food, right? We still have to eat. But it's creating that different relationship with it. And with your kids, I commend you. I really do. I don't know. And to be here and have the energy that you have, I love it. And so it's just finding those things that do allow you to escape, but maybe not for an hour. Maybe it's just 30 minutes or, Yeah, exactly. And so if we're starting to ask ourselves these questions and say something deeper comes up, like, me acknowledging that I was living with so much anxiety that food was my only way to feel good. If we start to notice, I'm escaping to this video game because my thoughts are overwhelming at night, or I have to have that glass of wine every night, even though I don't want to, because I just need a way to relax. How do we take that knowledge and bring it into tapping to support us? Yeah. I think it's, we can certainly do a tapping round around that. And it's also shifting the framing from needing it to, desiring it, wanting it, or just being used to it. And so, how can we shift the narrative that we tell ourselves? Like, how many people that say, oh, well, I shop online, I'm a shopaholic. Like, that's just who I am. And so we start to define ourselves by these habits. We say, oh, I work in social media, and so I need to do this. I need to be on the phone 24/7, 365. But do you need to? Like, is there a way that we can, again, kind of create it? So we create these stories and these identities about ourselves that aren't necessarily true, but and don't need to be true. And so if we can create, a different relationship again with that emotion, then I think that's what this is about.
Right. So it's like you can be telling yourself, I need this, until you begin to realize you don't actually need it. Like, you do the tapping and you begin to reframe, I can choose to do this or I cannot choose to do that. And I think that's the power that we're going to. We're not telling anyone, don't ever do that again. But do you feel like you're choosing, and it's not just this like knee-jerk reaction where you find yourself doing it and then regretting it?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And with the asterisk that, with dopamine, we develop a tolerance for it, and so, consequently, it does feel like for people that we do need that extra hit just to get back to that level that we started at. And we can shift that relationship, biochemically, but also mentally and emotionally too.
Yes. Well, I would love to jump into some tapping.
Okay. So yeah, we're going to just kind of ask ourselves some questions and start off that way, if that's okay.
Yes.
So at this point, we don't have to necessarily rate anything. Sometimes we start off by rating, but we're not even going to rate anything. We're just going to dive into it.
Okay.
All right. So let's just go ahead and start by tapping on the side of the hand, just thinking about your habit, whatever it might be. Maybe you have more than one, but if you want to just focus on one, that's fine. And just repeat after me. Even though sometimes I wonder if I do this thing.
Even though sometimes I wonder if I do this thing.
To fill a void.
To fill a void.
Or to avoid.
Or to avoid.
I'm open to figuring out what that might be.
I'm open to figuring out what that might be.
And even though I'm not even sure.
Even though I'm not even sure.
What need I may be trying to fill.
What need I may be trying to fill.
If any at all.
If any at all.
I'm still open to doing some exploration.
I'm still open to doing some exploration.
Good. Even though I'm not even sure what was going on in my life at that time.
Even though I'm not even sure what was going on in my life at that time.
When I started this habit.
When I started this habit.
Or what I may have even been feeling.
Or what I may have even been feeling.
I do know I'm in a different space now.
I do know that I'm in a different space now.
And I'm open to exploring.
And I'm open to exploring.
Starting with the inside of the eyebrow. What potential void is there?
What potential void is there?
Outside of the eye. Is there even a void?
Is there even a void?
Underneath the eye, part of me wonders whether or not there actually is.
Part of me wonders whether or not there actually is.
And underneath the nose, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
On the chin. Or is it about avoidance?
Or is it about avoidance?
Collarbone. I have no idea.
I have no idea.
Underneath the arm, what would I be trying to avoid?
What would I be trying to avoid?
Top of the head. I just know what the habit is.
I just know what the habit is.
Inside the eye, and not what emotion is underneath.
And not what emotion is underneath.
Outside the eye. I haven't even thought about that very much.
I haven't even thought about that very much.
Underneath the eye. But if there were some emotions underneath.
But if there were some emotions underneath
the nose, what might they be?
What might they be?
Jen, sadness, fear, worry, collarbone, loneliness, pain, hurt, underneath the arm. What could it be?
What could it be?
Top of the head. Maybe I just want to numb some things.
Maybe I just want to numb some things.
Inside the eye. And my habit helps to do that. Side of the eye. And there may be some emotions underneath.
Underneath
the eye. And that's okay. That's normal.
Underneath
the nose. We cover up things. As humans. Jen, that are painful or scary. Collarbone, and replace them with things that feel better. Which actually is really smart of us. Underneath the arm. And I've done that with this habit. Top of the head. I mean, who wouldn't want this hit of dopamine? And inside the eye. It does feel good. Outside the eye, but over time it's lost its use. It's caused more harm than good under the eye. Underneath the nose, it's taken up more time than I'm willing to give it anymore. And I'm ready for a change. Collarbone, I'm ready for something different, something new. Underneath the arm, ready to feel something different. Top of the head, ready to support my ways in ways I know and maybe in ways I know or don't know are possible. Good. Take a nice deep breath in and let go.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
I invite those who just had that experience to check in and also ask themselves what inner wisdom they have. What came up? What was, did you have an aha moment? Did you start to see yourself doing things differently? Really listen to those answers that you get or to those nudges that you get while you're tapping.
Yes. Yeah, and for some people, we might start to realize, oh, maybe I'm trying to get closer to, or I'd like to get closer to something like excitement or connection or joy or freedom, right? And by engaging in those habits, it's clouded that. And so sometimes when we do work like this, it starts to clear some of that out so we can get a little bit more clarity about what led us there and what are we trying to get to?
Yes, and how we can support ourselves. It's interesting that we're doing this today because this morning I started to, so it's winter here. I live in Connecticut. It gets very cold. You live in Germany at the moment. I know that you can relate, and you don't have a lot of daylight in the winter, and it is very easy for it to impact my mood. Like It's just, you don't get the same level of, I don't feel the same easy level of joy as I do in the summer. But what I've learned to do is be proactive. And so like I need to schedule things in February. The holidays are over. Like there's no more exciting things. I need to create some excitement in my life in February, or else I will get stuck in just being home. It's dark. Maybe I'm scrolling social media. You're just doing things that isn't what you really want. And I love how you're inviting us to also ask ourselves, what am I looking for? Am I looking for excitement with that video game, with that buying that thing? Am I looking for variety? And like, how can we actively create those feelings? So not have those feelings and not do that thing, but create them in a way that actually feels better for us.
Got it. Right. Exactly. Because that's what we all crave. Like we naturally crave that. We're all connected human beings. We are here to connect with each other. And, and a lot of those behaviors, what they do is they isolate us. And the more that we're isolated, the worse we feel, and the worse we feel, the more that we want to go to those behaviors to help us feel better. And I love the idea of, and there's something I can do differently, so that the second week in January, I can start to plan to go to a group class of a workout class that I like to do or was thinking about, or maybe I can start to look at taking, some sort of class where I'm just a little bit more connected with people, or go on a trip. Right. So,
right.
Yeah.
I love that. I think another element of some of these habits is that they're just so easily accessible. Like online shopping, I can grab my phone right now and probably in 10 seconds buy something. Like so fast.
Easy.
All these things are so accessible. So I think sometimes when we have these moments in our days, we just find ourselves trying to keep ourselves busy. It's so easy to just do something. Can you tell me a little bit about this concept of boredom, of actually having space where we're not going to do something?
Jessica, I feel like we've gotten away from what it even feels like to be bored.
I know.
Like, we don't even know what it feels like to be bored anymore. Like, if you think about it, I know. So growing up, and I was born in the 70s, but like growing up primarily in the 80s, and I used to say to my parents, I'm bored. And that was like one of the worst things that we could say, because then they'd be like,
me too, the worst.
They could be like, well, go to that Encyclopedia Britannica set that we just bought and look up something. Like, no, I don't want to. And then I'd be like, I'm not bored anymore. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so we, I think over time, especially now, we don't even have the possibility of getting bored, because the minute that starts to set in for many of us, we can just reach for our phones. We can go online. We can start to play a video game. We can connect in different ways with people. And I think, and I don't say this in that it's all negative, right? I think there's a lot of benefits. There are a lot of benefits to it. And in some ways, it does take us away from boredom. And the beautiful thing about boredom and silence and sitting in that, not knowing what you're going to do, right? Like even going out, I noticed this with people. I travel a good amount, and back in the day when I would travel, when I would sit at a restaurant or at a bar and just be there hanging out, waiting for my plane, everybody would be talking to each other, or at least you talk to like the one or two people beside you, right? And so you'd strike up a conversation. But even this last time I flew, it was fascinating to me because everybody beside me was on their phone the entire time. And I purposely made a point to not be on my phone, but to just like be present. And it can be really uncomfortable for people to simply be present. It feels like we should be doing something. Like, feels like I need to be doing something, but you don't. And in those moments is when you can create connection, and when you can create. It's almost like we've forgotten how to create because we've avoided boredom for so long.
Yeah,
And I'm
like
not
there's
saying
no
people
place.
are creative, but
Yeah, like we have no space for ideas because if we're engaging our mind in external things, we don't have that space to just have our own ideas of, well, wouldn't it be cool if I tried this or we did this, or just that creative thinking. That space for creative thinking is gone.
yes. Yeah, and years ago, millennia ago, or hundreds of years ago, when that wasn't even a thing. I mean, there was so much creativity that was being generated because that's all they had, right? And so, it's nice to just connect and disconnect from our devices. But and we say this as though devices are the only habits, but but just disconnect from whatever that might be and just connect with whatever is right around you, but also with the silence that's there, with, practicing meditation. I know for myself and for a lot of people that can help them to connect to that creative part of themselves that they didn't even know was there. So it's a beautiful process if you allow yourself to engage in it.
Some of these habits we know are things that we don't want to get rid of forever. But is there something to be said about having like a clean break, like a time? Obviously, we can't do this with food, but like a clear time where we're like, I'm not going to do that thing for just a certain amount of time and then reintroduce it in a new way. Does that play a part in this?
I think for each individual, it's a little bit different. Or for some people, they might need a full break. So for instance, again, to use myself, several years ago, I was on TikTok and I was doing midday dance breaks and every day I was creating and on it. But what I realized was because of that, I was actually spending more time on other social media outlets. So I got rid of TikTok completely. I was like, I'm just not going to do it. Like I can't, it's either all or none. And then consequently, I got rid of Instagram. I still have it, but it's not completely downloaded on my phone. And I've realized that by getting rid of those, I've actually scrolled less. But for some people, and some people need it for their job, actually, so it may not be an all or nothing thing, but maybe it's finding whatever that balance is and that middle ground is for them.
I love that. We're going to put even more tapping meditations in the workbook. What I love about our conversation today and the experience we've had today is the power we're giving ourselves. You're not like, this is what you should do and this is how you should do it. You're saying, come back to yourself, calm your nervous system, check in, and you'll know how to navigate this.
Yes. And I'm excited about, putting another tapping meditation into the workbook because I definitely have something that would address that. And I think it's important, again, just to like meet yourself where you are. And this isn't about beating yourself up or down or anywhere, in any direction. But it's more so having compassion with yourself in this process and understanding that, we're all on this journey together and everybody has struggled or struggles with one thing or another. And so once we can take away those really heavy feelings, then we can get to just releasing, letting go just a little bit more. And then we can find those tidbits of creativity within ourselves and things and discover things about ourselves that we may not have even known were there.
Yeah. Oh, it's so exciting. I'm excited for those who are listening and starting this journey and going to continue tapping. I feel like sometimes when we struggle with something like this, a habit that we don't like, it's this hidden blessing. It's the thing that gets our attention to say, let's look deeper at our life. Let's choose to do things consciously different. And sometimes it's like the very thing that we need that helps us to open up our lives to new possibilities.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I so appreciate you. I so appreciate your wisdom. Any last piece of advice before we wrap up?
Woo. Well, I appreciate you and for allowing me to share this platform with you and to share with your audience this message. And, you know, I think overall, my message is always, you know, how can we be a little bit more compassionate and forgiving with ourselves in this process, whatever process it is you're going through. And you know, just being present with yourself and starting to engage maybe in just a little bit more. Maybe you've been interested or curious about meditation or a little bit more tapping or whatever it might be, and using those opportunities to just delve a little bit deeper. And understand if you take some steps backwards, that's okay, because we're still learning. We're still learning. So, yeah.
We're always learning. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.